Scott Jr. Ereckson, Mongols MC.
What kept me motivated
Engines rumbling when the pack approaches.
is the dream.
Everyone looks. One of the most notorious MCs in the world. But how did this happen? We take you to San Diego, where Junior's story begins. How did he become a member of the Mongols Motorcycle Club?
A club where unconditional love for a brother comes before money.
Are the things that George Christie, former Hells Angel president, said true? Today we hear Junior's side, how the conflict between the Mongols and the Hells Angels started from someone who was there in the thick of it in the 80s. We talk about what it was like joining the Mongols Motorcycle Club at a time where the Hells Angels have Hollywood movies and high-level interviews, massive popularity. What was it like to stand against that and the rise of that popularity, and how Junior rose to becoming a 4-time national president of the Mongols Motorcycle Club? Are they criminals or motorcycle enthusiasts? This is Scott Jr. Ereckson, a legend in the MC world, an ex-boxer and a football player, author of the book, The Unknown Mongol 1 and 2. Unlike most others that get excommunicated, to this day, Junior is an active member with over 40 years in, spending 8 years in prison over the murder of a Hells Angels president. Today, Junior tells his side of the story.
I'm Scott Jr. Ereckson, and this is my story.
I came from a really good family. I was adopted. My father worked for the federal government. He was a civil servant for the Navy. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. And I came from a good family. I mean, it was a good family. But as I grew up, something inside of me kept drawing me, as you would say, across the tracks. I was drawn to a suburb more than where we lived in the upper class.
Yeah.
And so I ran with a bunch of guys from junior high school in the suburbs, a little rowdy crew, young guys, and tearing up some stuff. And that's kind of how I was when I was young.
What got you into the motorcycles?
Well, what happened with the motorcycle thing is we had moved to Hawaii. My dad had transferred out there, and he was working at Pearl Harbor at the time.
Wow.
And we lived in a little town called Kailua on the windward side. I was just started getting into bikes, and I started buying the Harley, like the motorcycle books, Easy Rider.
Oh, okay.
And
They had them out there?
yeah, they had them out there, and there was actually clubs out there at the time. We used to watch clubs as we were training in the box. When I was training for amateur boxing, there was actually a clubhouse out there. I believe it was the Sons of Hawaii were out there.
Oh, wow.
And we would see them come in on the bikes, and I had a buddy and be watching. Go, look at that, man, and watch, and I'm just in awe with the motorcycle things. And I always thought, this is something that I want to do someday.
Yeah. How long were you in Hawaii for before you moved back to California?
About 2 years.
2 years?
Yes.
So you went to like Paradise. California is a beautiful place though, but you kind of like went to Paradise and then went back to Cali. What was that like, that transition?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I didn't like Hawaii. So the thing about Hawaii is, when you go there in high school, everybody there is growing up together. So I had some issues when I was there. They'll come up to you on the beach, start fights, everything. But I dealt with that, So what I did is I wasn't in a private school. I was in a regular local school there. A lot of the people that were in the service went to private schools to avoid any issues. But they put me in a public school. My parents did. So I was dealing with a little more of the local people. So I played football for a small team. There was only like 24 of us on the team. It was so small, we went both ways. On the football team, I played offense and defense. And once I made my way on that football team and started kicking some ass, I was accepted. But I had to wait till that before people were accepting me as one of them.
Yeah. In your book, the way you articulated the first time you ever saw a motorcycle club member, break that down for the people who haven't read your book, The Unknown Mongol. It's so descriptive. Like the way you write is like you're in a movie. You see everything. You're so visual with the way you put it down. Tell me about that.
Well, the book starts out, we had gone to I had a buddy named Kurt that I'd grown up with since we were kids. Curtis Harwood was his name. He since passed. So we used to go out here to this little place and fish, and one day we were out there fishing, and in the distance I could hear this bike growling down the road. It was like a dirt road to get out there. So we were out there fishing, and I heard this dirt bike, and I told Kurt, I said, hey, I think someone's coming. So we looked, and seen that Harley coming around the bend, and this guy was big. He was a big guy, biker dude, and we were about 14, and I said, I didn't know how to strike up a conversation with a guy like this, and neither did Kurt, so we grabbed the poles and kind of hid out. We went across back the road, kind of sat there in some bushes and was watching him. So this guy came up on the bike, got off, and we're watching this guy, and he parks and he gets off the bike, and what he does, he walks out to the lake, and the first thing he does, he takes a piss. And then he walks over to walks down a little bit and kind of kneels down and does a push-up, takes a drink out of the lake. Wasn't where he pissed, it was down a little bit. But then he takes the water, he runs away out of the water, and we're watching this guy, and I mean, there was no words, we were just watching, this is unbelievable. So gets off the bike, and as he walks to that water, we see that patch on his back. It says Mongols, California. And I'd heard of him, but I'd never seen him. So we watched and he hid, and he got out, and he took out a buck knife. There was eyeball in this tree, and somebody lied with like, was carving or his hammer. We're watching him, he's carving, he stepped back and looked at it a little bit, and carved, and finally he put that knife away and looked up at it, and took a look at it, and turned around and cranked that bike up and took off. So when he took off, I looked at Kurt and go, dude, what the hell just happened, right? And we were 14-year-old kids.
Yeah.
So we ran out there, and there it was in that tree. It says Mongols MC, San Diego, it said, San Diego chapter.
Wow.
To this day, I want to go back to that spot, and I want to find that carving, because it was in a eucalyptus tree. I know it's still there.
Wow.
I'd really like to take a picture of that.
Yeah. That's an amazing story. So was it really like how they portray, like back in the days, there's a perception of the bikers where they lived on their bike. They didn't really work like that. They did whatever. Well, that's fantasy, because you got to be able to like fund stuff. But they were just like constantly partying, riding, lived on the bike. You said he was about to water washing his face. So was it really like that in those days?
I got to tell you, I made my patch. I full patched November 15th, 1980. I turned 20 on August 3rd and started prospecting on the 16th of August. So it was almost 3 months to the day. It was a whole different gig. It was a whole different era. It was the cowboy days. We did what we wanted. We went where we wanted. But we were looking at a whole different thing. And we were the Mongols, which really at the time where we were, in my area, it was more of a neighborhood group. And we were all from the same neighborhood, the guys that were in the club. Now, the Hells Angels in our area were also a neighborhood clique, basically. Some of our guys and some of their guys went to high school together. So they knew each other. If you grew up in this area over here, say at Allied Gardens or Lakeside, you were probably going to be a Hell's Angel. If you grew up in San Carlos or Santee, you were headed to be a Mongol. So it was a neighborhood thing. And
the Hells Angels are always on TV, so they have that appeal to the people that are not in the clubs. That must have been rough at that time. You guys had to be like kind of like the rebels for going the way you did, right? Because you would think that like the movie stuff makes people want to get down with stuff, So right. You were dealing with that dynamic at that time, right?
I was, and the thing was I had a bunch of high school friends, those guys I said that we were riding with and running with. When I came back from Hawaii, I still hooked up with some of them guys. And when I joined the Mongols, my friends just couldn't believe it. They're going, It was like, what are you doing? They go, what are you doing? They go, these guys are War of the Angels. And at the time, we were probably, I want to say maybe 12 deep in San Diego chapter. And then we had Old South Bay, which was at the end of the county. We were East County, and they were like South County, Old South Bay. And I mean, we partied with those guys, but we were kind of like fighting our own thing. All the stuff was kind of going on in East County, Santee, Lakeside area. And so we were the ones that were, everybody faced it down there, but we were the ones kind of dealing with it face to face down there in San Diego. And when I got in, it was only, Jingles and Redbird got hit in 77. And I prospected in 80. So the stigma of what had happened was still there. I mean, we couldn't shake it. It was still going on. We still felt it. And when they came at us back then after the Jingles River, they came at us hard. There was the cemetery. There was a couple other issues. The bike shop, there was things happening. And every time we stuck our heads, it was like that game. You hit the little monsters and they go back in the hole. Every time we stuck our heads up, they'd take a shot at us. So, we had to discuss, we had to talk about how we're going to do this. I mean, do we have a chance? We knew that the odds were against us the whole time. But I got to tell you, the 12 of us in that chapter, we didn't give a f***. And you know what? We realized that we had to take the bull by the horns and go after these guys. And you know what? That's what I did.
Being that it was just 12 of you, did you ever envision that it would be like all over the world? Like,
never. I never thought it'd be anything like that.
Tell me about about a good part of the book. The stories are so good. The one about when you first met Mongo, it was like a beer. Is that his name? It was
Mike.
Mike, yeah,
Mike. Okay, so
the beer can thing.
Yeah, no, let me explain about Mike. Mike was from the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And he was about 6 years older than me. And like I said, we all grew up in the same neighborhood. We all knew each other. Mike was a few years older than me, and so I had hooked up with Mike and those guys. They had heard about me, I think, through some other people that I had a bike, and I was a football star, and I was a jock, and I liked to fight, and I was a violent motherfucker. So what happened was, I started hanging out with those guys. I hooked up with them, I think, New Year's Eve, 1980. From then on, it became a friendship, and I wanted to be a Hell's Angel. It was the thing. But my time around the Hell's Angels was not comfortable. I did not feel comfortable around those guys. I always felt like I had to be on my toes. I always felt like they were going to turn around and start beating up the hang-arounds. And the difference was when I got around the Mongols, I never felt like that. They took me under their arms. They took me under their wings. And I felt like these guys really gave a f*** about me. Yeah. And that's what drew me to that, there was a real brotherhood right there. So when I got in this thing in 1980, I knew that the odds were against us. We all knew the odds were against us, but we knew we had to do something. So basically what I told these guys was, hey, you know what? Give me the football when we get a shot and let me run for it. So every time we had a shot, whatever it was, I ran for a touchdown, dude. So they gave me the ball and I ran, whether I was somebody up with a pool cue, whatever I was doing, I played hard. And I think that my motivation motivated the other guys in our chapter and motivated, I think, the whole club in a way. And we picked up the pace. And even, I know I've heard George Christie even say in one of his videos, he says, these guys in the 80s, they were playing hardball. He goes, they were as mean as we were. They were doing the things, we had to start worrying is what he says. And you know what? He's talking about us down there. Yeah. And, we played hard.
What I've always noticed, and I think you're a testament to this, I think that if you look at anything, like any large group, there's a core that makes them respected, and then there's everybody else. And I think that's kind of what you're explaining right now. You had your core, because without a strong core, you can't have a nation,
Well, back then, the numbers of the club were a lot different than they are today. So the closest ones to us were Old South Bay, which was at the whole other side of the county. Otherwise, after that, it was LA County. So we were kind of like on an island by ourselves out there. You know, and don't get me wrong. I mean, Old South Bay was having their issues down there too, but with a different group of Hells Angels from a different side of town. But we just put it down. The 12 of us put it down, and we kept going after them. We kept trying, and it worked. It worked for us.
How did it all start in the beginning? Like, what made it like where it couldn't be squashed?
Well, I have my own opinion on that, and I think the opinions change of what started the war and what caused it. And I'm going to tell you my opinion of what it was. Is I don't know the whole details behind it, but there was a Hells Angel out of Richmond named Chet Green. Well, Chet Green formed the Scavengers. He left the Hells Angels. And when he left, he wasn't on good terms with those guys. So then he started a club called the Scavengers in L.A. Well, we ended up eating up the Scavengers. They went our way. So we took him, his brother, a couple guys, and they went out to Oklahoma. And, it ended up that he testified apparently against those guys. So, their point of it, I can see we took somebody that might have been no good. You know what I'm saying? I had a problem with it the whole time. But I took care of that. In 1996, in the early 90s, we flew out there to Oklahoma, and I dealt with him. I threw him out of the club. I wasn't going to deal with that anymore.
Is this before you became national?
No, I was national at the time I did this.
Okay. So you were national like 4 times, right?
Well, I was national. I took the job in 88, my first term, and got reelected. So that was 2 terms right there. And then I got reelected in 96. So then I got elected in 96, and I got reelected in 1998 or 97. And then I went to prison before elections in 98.
So what was it like being the president of a club that's so respected like that, moving around? How was it? How was the parties like?
Well, I got to tell you, so here I was. Let's go to the 90s. In the late 80s, I was a kid. I was 28 years old, and the San Diego chapter for the first time had gone to San Diego, and I had it down there, and was only down there for the time that I had it, and returned back to Mother Chapter to LA where it belongs. But I got a lot of good guidance. All the guys in my chapter were older. My president was an ex-national president, and I had good guidance down there as a youngster, and we did a good job down there, and we just did the best we could, holding things down.
In the next episode, we talk with Junior about going to prison for the murder of a Hells Angel in an infamous barroom incident in the 80s that stole many years out of his life. We're going to talk about how it was in the California penitentiary, all of this for his dedication to the Mongols Motorcycle Club.